Well, I came back to England in, I guess, about September of '67, and started and living in London, and worked. I was working as a van driver in the daytime, and trying to work out what I was going to do musically. From that point, how to get into something. So I was going out to gigs and pubs and God knows what all over London constantly, and I would be seeing a fair bit of Sid and of the other group of friends that we had at that time. So I ran into him a little bit more than I had done, and I got to know the others, Nick and Rick and Roger, a bit better. And at that one, Nick sidled up to me and told me that things were getting pretty desperate, and I was to keep it under my hat, but they were thinking of making some sort of a change, and would I be interested?
Set the contours for the heart of a sun, the Pink Floyd.
It wasn't exactly the sort of musical thing that I wanted to get into at that particular point, to be honest, and but the fame that they had achieved was obviously very enticing. I didn't think it was that serious, which obviously was the start of a very difficult and strange time, with both Sid and I turning up together to rehearsals and going out and doing shows with 5 of us, where I would be learning and playing Sid's parts and singing Sid's songs. You know, there was discussion, of the old discussions of that he would eventually sort of stay home being a Brian Wilson sort of writing character, and we would still continue using his material, and I would be the front man on stage. But it wasn't really workable, and that notion passed quite quickly. I think there were only 5 gigs, as I remember it, where the 5 of us played together before we ceased to go and pick him up.
When we play, I think the way the act's developed in the last 6 months has been influenced rather a lot by the fact that we've played in ballrooms,
yes,
necessarily, because you know that this is obviously the first market. But I think concerts have given us a chance to realise that maybe the music we play isn't directed at dancing necessarily like normal pop groups.
I think one's fairly ambitious. You want to get on with stuff, and that sort of offer is a very hard one to turn down. And logically speaking, it wasn't working. Sid was not performing at all on stage, and it was kind of tragic. I don't suppose I saw any option but just do the best that I could. But I'm sure we were all sort of full of some sort of guilt, and remained that way for a long time. I mean, the Pink Floyd thing with the management, Peter and Andrew, and the 4 people and Sid, there was not much discussion of whether, in my memory, there wasn't much discussion of what one could do for Sid. I didn't actually know. I couldn't. You'd have to ask Storm or someone, or the people who were present at that, exactly what happened to do with all that. We didn't know what to do about it. None of us knew anything about schizophrenia or any sort of mental illness. On occasions he seemed quite happy. I don't think he It's very hard to tell. And, you know, communication with him was so difficult, and everything you said to him sort of seemed to be on one level, one plane of existence, and his replies sort of came back from a different plane of existence, and it's very hard to know what he was thinking. As soon as he'd left Pink Floyd, or been ousted from Pink Floyd, whatever you want to call it, he became surrounded by this sort of coterie of rather unpleasant hangers-on, as opposed to the friends he'd had previously. There were a lot of people who wanted to be imbued with the magic and the charisma that Sid had. They thought that by providing him with more drugs of every different type, that they would become his friends. I mean, a lot of the music was just sort of being created. We were sitting in a rehearsal room, ghastly little room in King's Cross, putting that all together, and I can't really remember at the exact time when it must have struck Roger that the emotional impact of the beginnings of this piece of music were going to involve Sid and be about Sid. My performances of Wish You Were Here still number in sort of 300 or 400, I suppose, instead of the thousands that some people might do. But it still resonates. It still has its meaning. It means that to me every time I sing it. It's a brilliant, it is a very, very good combination of music and words that seems to capture something. There's hundreds of different ways you can do something almost the same as that, and some work and some have a little bit of magic to them, and some don't. And the ones that do have that bit of magic to them, it's obvious, you know, to people around. Even just that piece of music has an emotional pull to it. That's what we're struggling to find all the time.